This is AM 650's The Law Show with Sterling Fox. Now back to the show.
Good to have you with us this Sunday morning. Katie Van Nostrand is with us in studio. Ms. Van Nostrand is a lawyer with McMillan LLP in our city and is a specialist in the area of immigration law and represents many clients who are trying to get people, highly qualified individuals from all over the planet here legally into Canada to work. We talked about the labor market opinion, Katie, that is sometimes required to provide the government with the satisfaction that the immigrant worker coming in is going to not take a job from a Canadian. In fact, the only person in the world who can likely do this job this well is this person. There's no Canadian who can do it. So we've proven that, and now this person has been given permission to come to Canada. Would that permission be in the form of a work permit then?
Just about. We're one step away, really, at this point.
What are we missing?
The work permit itself.
Okay.
The labor market opinion, or LMO, is just really the confirmation from the government saying, yes, we agree, you couldn't find anyone. That's all right. You can hire this person.
All right.
Or you can hire someone to do this job. And so with that, what I generally do is I help the employer to put together all of the information after we've received this positive labor market opinion, so that they can give this package of information, literally a package, to their employee who's going to come into Canada and apply for their work permit.
Okay.
So we, in the package you might find a copy of their passport, a copy of their resume, company information telling about the company that they're going to be working for in Canada. Mm-hmm. Definitely a copy of that labor market opinion.
Of course.
And so on.
So do they have to apply for the work permit from their country of origin? Is that a requisite? You need to submit the paperwork from abroad before you arrive?
It depends on which country you're coming from.
Okay.
If you're from a country where the citizens of that country are required to hold a visa to enter Canada, like we talked about earlier.
Sure.
Or you might need a medical exam before you enter Canada, depending on what field you're going to be working in and how long you're going to be in Canada for. Generally, in those circumstances, you do need to apply from your home country at the Canadian Embassy before you come in. Wait times on that processing can be anywhere from a month to 6 months, depending on where you're applying from.
Okay, but now you're representing a big, powerful company that wants this person here yesterday. And they haven't even filed the paperwork for their work permit, but we know where they are. We know where they live. We know we want them to come to work for us. How do we expedite this file and not make it take 6 months?
Sometimes there just isn't any way to get around it.
Really?
Sometimes it's just going to take 6 months. What we always look at before we start even the labor market opinion process is, are there any exemptions that this person can fall into? Common ones are workers under the North American Free Trade Agreement. So
there are categories of workers under NAFTA that don't need some of these protocols?
They won't need the labor market opinion. That's
really?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are also intercompany transferees. So let's say you're working for a multinational company. They've got an office in London, and they want to move you to their office in Calgary. Let's say, as long as you've been working in that job for a year, full-time in the last 3 years, you're in either a specialized knowledge or managerial executive type position. Mm-hmm. So, you're very, very highly specialized in what you do.
Right.
The company can bring you over to work in Canada for a certain amount of time. And for that, you don't need the labor market opinion.
Because it's a corporate transfer.
That's right.
Internal. Interesting.
It's internal. And there are, you can't just keep renewing forever. Specialized knowledge workers can generally only stay working in Canada for up to 5 years. Managerial or executive employees can usually only work for 7 years.
Okay.
So there is a cutoff at that point, which I think helps to keep Canadians happy that, there are going to be jobs available for them potentially in the future once this person is finished.
So the professional, let's go back to this person now sitting somewhere overseas. Mm-hmm. They've got a job in Canada. They've been hired by one of your clients in British Columbia. So now they're getting pretty excited. They're doing the paperwork. They're going to get that work permit done as quickly as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. So then they're going to make some plans. They have a family. they would really like to bring the family to their new adventure in the new country. How likely is that to happen, and what rules need to be observed in order to get the family, let's assume there's a spouse and children. What extra stuff needs to happen to make that family unit all arrive together?
Well, it's generally possible, which is great. And in Canada, we're very open to different types of families. So you can be married, or you can be common law, you can be opposite sex partners or same-sex partners. They don't discriminate, which is great, because you get lots of different types of people wanting to bring their families into Canada.
Sure.
So generally, as long as the primary work permit holder, so the person who's been hired by this Canadian company, has a contract for at least 6 months with a Canadian company, and they're going to be working in a higher skilled position, they can bring their spouse and their kids along with them, and their spouse can actually get what's called an open spousal work permit.
Oh, really?
So the spouse can work.
I thought that would be exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll let him in because he's really valuable and the country needs him, to say nothing of his employer. But, okay, he's taking up some employment space here. So if anybody that he brings along in his retinue will be forbidden to work. That is not the case at all.
Not the case, as long as you're, again, going to be here for at least 6 months and in a higher skilled position.
Interesting.
Yeah, and people will bring their kids. People often bring their kids. They can even go to school here, generally without a study permit, as long as the primary work permit holder, either the mother or father, has a valid work permit in Canada. The kids can go to school, elementary school, secondary school, while they're here.
Interesting stuff. Now, this is a category of worker that they're pretty highly specialized, and you represent clients who go literally looking all over the world for very, very specific, highly specialized individuals. Let's flip the coin for a second. And here in British Columbia, we have a whole variety of employment opportunities. And up in the interior, we have seasonal opportunities. Every summer, the Okanagan just is super abundant with produce that we need a really strong temporary labor force to harvest. So we need large numbers of people for very short periods of time to move in, get it done, and move on. What are those workers? Let's assume that they're not all Canadians, and they generally aren't. So how does a government, or how do we as a country treat those seasonal harvester type workers?
Yeah, there's a program under Service Canada, Employment Social Development Canada was what it's called, and they are the ones who govern labor market opinions and such.
Okay.
And there are certain exemptions for agricultural workers, specifically seasonal agricultural workers, and that gets used quite a bit in BC, obviously, because we do have the grape pickers and fruit pickers, especially in the Okanagan. And there are a number of other exemptions as well with labor market opinions, so not all employers need to advertise the position. And some employers even get a fast-track processing time. Generally, for labor market opinions, it will take 8 to 12 weeks just for the labor market opinion to process.
Right.
But agricultural workers, film and entertainment as well is another one.
Right.
Generally, they don't have to advertise for the position as long as the person will be doing a specific job in that field.
Well, it's pretty standard. Every summer, August through the end of September, we know that in the Niagara region in Ontario and in the Okanagan region in British Columbia, there will be a need for a workforce of temporary people. That's a given on any year, isn't it?
That's right.
So the government has to be ready for that year after year, don't they?
That's right. And they've had these programs in force for quite some time that will allow employers who need these people to come and help them with their crops and harvesting.
Sure.
And generally they can get them in faster than any other person who's looking to come and work in Canada, and it really does take a load off, I think, for these employers.
What about getting them out at the end of the term when all the pears and peaches have been picked? The taxpayers of this country aren't particularly interested in having these people stick around on unemployment for the next 10 months till it's time to harvest again. So how do we ensure that these temporary workers won't be a burden on the taxpayer?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it does come up. Usually, when people are given their work permits, they're only granted a work permit for the exact amount of time that they're going to be needed for work in
Aha.
Canada.
Okay.
So, if it's, let's say, a fruit picker, you might get 4 to 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
however long the employee or the employer needs you. And at the end of that 4 to 6 months, whatever the expiry date is on your work permit, you need to leave the country on that date.
Okay.
Of course, there are probably people who don't leave on that date.
Pretty safe bet.
And the government and CBSA officers have a record of those. They didn't used to my knowledge, go looking for people, but I know that they've had a few programs in the recent years where they have started cracking down on people who outstay their welcome in Canada and don't either renew as a visitor or renew their work permit in a new position, new job. So they have started to make sure that these seasonal workers and other foreign workers leave at the end of their term in Canada.
Well, I asked you much earlier on in the conversation today, comparing us to the noisy neighbors to the south and their immigration problem. They have millions of illegal immigrants in the United States, and you said it's unlikely that we have proportionately that kind of immigration problem. That, however, does not excuse us from having a few of our own.
We do.
I mean, we're a pretty soft-touch people.
It happens.
And why don't you just mention the movies and the film industry in British Columbia, which kind of fond of that. It's kind of a glamorous area of employment and very temporary. All these stars are coming in to take a lot of money out of here and work for what, 6-8 weeks tops? We'll talk about the film industry and the glamorous side of the immigration business with our guest, Katie Van Nostrand from McMillan LLP in Vancouver. This is The Law Show on AM 650, and we'll be right back.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is AM 650's The Law Show.